Coming up on 5 Minute News. Russia and Ukraine are at war. Texas Attorney General calls gender-reaffirming surgery child abuse. And white supremacists plead guilty to planning US power grid attack. It's Thursday, February 24. I'm Anthony Davis. Russian troops launched their anticipated attack on Ukraine on Thursday as President Vladimir Putin cast aside international condemnation and sanctions, warning other countries that any attempt to interfere would lead to consequences you have never seen. Big explosions were heard before dawn in Kiev, Kharkiv and Odessa as world leaders decried the start of a Russian invasion that could cause massive casualties and topple Ukraine's democratically elected government. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky introduced martial law, saying Russia has targeted Ukraine's military infrastructure as explosions are heard across the country. Zelensky said he had just talked to President Joe Biden, and the US was rallying international support for Ukraine. He urged Ukrainians to stay home and not to panic. Biden pledged new sanctions to punish Russia for an act of aggression that the international community had for weeks anticipated but could not prevent through diplomacy. Putin justified it all in a televised address, asserting the attack was needed to protect civilians in eastern Ukraine, a false claim the US had predicted he would make as a pretext for an invasion. He accused the US and its allies of ignoring Russia's demand to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO and offer Moscow security guarantees, and credulously claimed that Russia doesn't intend to occupy Ukraine but will move to demilitarize it and bring those who committed crimes to justice. Biden, in a written statement, condemned the unprovoked and unjustified attack on Ukraine as he promised the US and its allies will hold Russia accountable. Anticipating international condemnation and countermeasures, Putin issued a stark warning to other countries not to meddle, saying whoever tries to impede us, let alone creates threats for our country and its people, must know that the Russian response will be immediate and lead to the consequences you have never seen in history. Texas State Attorney General Ken Paxton has called gender-affirming surgeries and medical care child abuse. As State Governor Greg Abbott ordered the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services to conduct an investigation into such practices. While the Attorney General's opinion has no legal bearing, rights groups argue it will spread fear and misinformation, and Abbott's move has prompted an outpouring of condemnation, as well as celebratory statements from some social conservatives. No court here in Texas or anywhere in the country has ever found that gender-affirming care can be considered child abuse, said the American Civil Liberties Union of Texas in a statement. The opinion released by Paxton cites highly partisan, outdated, and inaccurate information that ignores the consensus of every major medical association and peer-reviewed standards of care. Trans youth continue to be threatened in Texas by state leadership as part of a politically motivated misinformation campaign that harms children, the statement added. The actions come after a wave of anti-trans bills that failed to materialize in recent years, some of which would have included preventing transgender Texans from using bathrooms according to their gender identity rather than their biological sex in government buildings and public schools and universities. Major U.S. medical organizations all say that gender-affirming care is medically necessary for young transgender people. Texas government has increasingly embraced controversial, socially conservative positions in recent years, even as its population has become more diverse and its political leanings have drifted away from being a solid red state. The state has the second highest number of trans people in the U.S., with some 125,350 adults in Texas identifying as transgender. 3 men pleaded guilty on Wednesday for their roles in conspiring to attack US power grids as part of a plot motivated by white supremacy to sow civil unrest and economic distress, the US Justice Department said. Christopher Cook, Jonathan Frost and Jackson Sarwal each pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiring to provide material support to extremists, court documents filed in the US District Court for the Southern District of Ohio showed. The case comes at a time when Justice Department officials have pointed to an increase in domestic threats stemming from white supremacists and anti-government militias. In January, the department announced the formation of a new domestic terrorism unit amid a growing realization that extremists within the country represent a threat on par with that posed by foreign militant groups such as Islamic State. Prosecutors say that in the fall of 2019, Frost and Cook hatched their plans in an online chat group. Their plan was to attack substations or power grids with powerful rifles, as they believed it would cost the government millions of dollars while causing unrest, the Justice Department said. They had conversations about how the possibility of the power being out for many months could cause war, even race war, the department said. As their plan advanced, prosecutors say they met in Columbus, Ohio in February 2020 to train. Frost allegedly provided Cook and Sarwal with suicide necklaces laced with fentanyl they could ingest if they were caught by law enforcement. They are also accused of painting a swastika flag under a bridge at a park. Their plot to carry out their mission in Ohio was derailed during a traffic stop in which Sarwal tried to swallow his suicide pill. He ultimately survived. The defendants face a maximum penalty of 15 years in prison. You can subscribe to 5-Minute News on YouTube with your preferred podcast app. Ask your smart speaker or enable 5-Minute News as your Amazon Alexa flash briefing skill. Subscribe, rate and review online at 5minute.news. 5-Minute News is an Evergreen podcast covering politics, inequality, health and climate, delivering independent, unbiased and essential world news daily.